Hello and welcome to Megan's Mystical Mashup, a conversation about life, the universe, and anything in between. I'm Megan Rounds and welcome to the show. Today's guest has been a member of the Lightworkers Lab since the beginning and spends much of her time between the main lab and the circle. She's been married to fellow labber Mark Vollbrecht, also known as the Energy Wizard, for 43 years. 43 years! Together they live in Portland, Oregon with their two elderly fur babies, dog Skylar and cat Maya. She's mom to three adult children, Christopher, fellow labber and moderator Lauren Olivia, and Krista. And she is also grandmother to four amazing, brilliant grandchildren. Her main modalities include claircognizance, clairvoyance, and clairsentience in that order. She's also a highly sensitive person and possibly empathic. A retired software developer, she now spends her time with her hobby, fabric art, which you can learn more about and hopefully see some samples in the show notes posted after the show, but also a link to her Facebook page. She's a huge animal advocate and loves to read, walk, get together with family, have long chats over good coffee or a glass of wine, and generally anything relaxing and uplifting. One passion in particular is anthropology and archaeology, and she especially loves how historical archaeology blows common misconceptions about historical events and people out of the water. I do too, that's pretty cool. Please give a warm Lightworkers welcome to Mary Ann Vollbrecht. Hi, Mary Ann.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Good, good. My seasonal allergies kicked up a little bit this morning, so I have my tissues at hand. So if you see me blowing my nose, that's why.
Okay, you can blow your nose. I'll cough occasionally, intermittently, it seems. So those are a part of my seasonal allergies. We can just celebrate the season together, yeah?
Oh, yay.
So, my first question for you is going to be about the cool experience you had yesterday that I would really love to hear more about what's involved. And then we can talk about your spiritual journey as we discussed earlier.
My cool experience yesterday?
The
sound bath. Oh, my goodness, yeah. So Mark and I made a quick trip over to the coast yesterday afternoon, had dinner at our favorite little Mexican place in a wonderful little village called Manzanita, and then we attended Christy Kay's sound bath. And it was lovely. We walked in this huge room, everything was laid out, all her bowls and her gong and everything, and we just grabbed our yoga mats and blankets and everything. We all laid out on the floor. And because there was a small group of us, she was able to use the sound bowls right on our bodies directly. Oh. It was amazing. It was an hour of relaxation and bliss. It was lovely. And at the end of it, during it, I could feel stuff releasing at a cellular level. If you've ever had a deep tissue massage when you've been really stressed out or injured or something, and that feeling afterwards where you feel like the toxins have been released, that was the feeling afterwards. And I drank a lot of water and just washed it all out. So it was wonderful, lovely.
It sounds like it. And I've had an inkling of that kind of experience, but nothing to the extent that you've described. It sounds wonderful. And I'm very drawn to sound and frequency and vibration as well. So it's like, I can just, how did you walk?
Carefully.
But that's really neat. And Christy Kay is a member of the lab, yes?
Right, yes.
Yeah, good. So
and she'll be at Bliss.
Oh, very cool. Yes.
Yeah.
And so for those of you watching, some of you may be going to the Bliss Retreat. Some of you may not. But if you're not, that's okay. Plan for it for next year. I'm not going this year, but I have gone 2 years previously. And it's just fabulous. And I know you're going to be there too, right?
Yeah, right.
Good. Yeah. There's some really neat things that, from what I understand, that are planned for that, including like a market. And Mary Ann will be presenting her tapestries there, which I've looked, from what I saw on your Facebook page, they're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
It's like just excited for that. Okay, well, so you were previously on with Mark back in April, and
Yep.
that was a really fun conversation. If you didn't see that conversation, for those of you watching, I'll have that in the show notes too, the links and the way to watch the replay. They were in Hawaii at the time and took time out of their holiday to talk with me, and it was a really neat conversation. But I wanted to talk with you individually as
Sure.
well.
Yeah.
And so I've already talked to Mark individually, and I've talked to Lauren individually. So I'm so happy you're here today to talk with us about, well, your own spiritual journey and your path to the Lightworkers Lab. And some of those may intersect with Mark's, and that's totally fine. But I really want to hear about you.
Okay.
So you can start in any place you'd like.
Well, I am the oldest member of the Lightworkers Lab. I'm 69, and I've got many decades of living behind me. And this could be a really long story, so I'm going to give you the abridged version. In my mid-40s, I gave up on the various flavors of Christianity. Nothing ever worked, nothing fit, and kind of threw up my hands, didn't know where I was going to go spiritually. Went through a very trying lesson, very deep, trying, difficult life lesson. And during that time, my father actually showed up. And I had no idea that, deceased people could talk to you or would talk to you or whatever. And he showed up and he helped me through that. And then I got a new job, and the new job led to a friend who was friends with an amazing woman that I took a psychic development course from. And bit by bit, I started opening up and reading voraciously all kinds of different spiritual things. I tend to go through phases where I'll find something that really clicks and I'll just absorb everything about it. And then all of a sudden it's like, not so much, and I'll move on and I'll find something else. But every step along the way, I'm absorbing more and integrating it. And so I'm rather quite the eclectic light worker. Theosophy, Alice Bailey, witchcraft. I have a dear spirit guide. Her name is Deirdre. And I had done meditation with her one time. And that evening I went to bed, and I'm laying in bed, and she just told me clear as a knot, "You need to study witchcraft, girl." I'm like, "What? No, not me. I don't want anything to do with that." And but I met a friend, a new friend after that, and she was a practicing witch. And so I started taking some courses from her. I loved it. I really connected with nature-based spirituality, learned so much from it, joined the coven, belonged to a coven for several years. And then I kind of discovered Ram Dass. And once again, I jumped in with both feet into his teachings, read several of his books, and got so much out of it. So I just very eclectic, but gosh, I don't know. Before the Lightworkers Lab came about, I had come across Crystal, and I think a YouTube, and I really liked what she had to say. It really resonated with me, and I felt uplifted. And so I started following her on Facebook. This is when she just had her own plain Jane Facebook page. And then when the Lightworkers Lab came about, I was pretty quick to join. I remember thinking, gosh, we have 100 members now. Oh, that's so many. How are we going to keep track? And our daughter, Lauren Olivia, was going through her own awakening and struggling with some things, having some questions. So I gifted her with a reading with Crystal Ann, which really helped her. And that kind of brought her into Crystal Ann's group. And then, I don't know, Mark joined somewhere along the line. Oh, he took a class on symbols from her.
Oh,
and,
sure.
Yeah, and that kind of got him. So all three of us it's a family affair.
Which I just love. I love, love, love that. I know the last time we talked, I asked about that. What's it like to be married to a light worker? And it's really a question for both you and Mark, but because I don't have that experience, I'm just curious if there are significant differences, and you may not know because you've been married so long. You may not have a comparison.
I guess the biggest difference is, like, we'll be having dinner, Mark and Lauren and I, And we're chatting about metaphysical things and spiritual things as other people talk about sports scores, the political climate, what's going on in the mundane muggle world. And we're just talking about high vibe stuff. And, people at nearby tables, they can hear. We don't care. We just gotta let it all hang out.
Well, and I think that is helpful when you can have those conversations with other people, instead of having them look at you, in the conversation, like, what are you talking about? That's weird.
Yeah.
Those types of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
In all fairness, my husband doesn't do that so much anymore. He's pretty much used to my talking about whatever and not really caring about his reactions.
Yeah, Mark was like that because I woke up and was doing all kinds of woo-woo long before he did. And he was pretty tolerant. He's very respectful. I have to say, he was just kind of, I think, biding his time. But we still have family members who are not into this. And, golly, it gets tricky because sometimes, the whole family's together and all of a sudden something comes up in conversation and there's Mark or Lauren or I or all three of us talking woo-woo stuff in front of the others, and they're like, So it gets a little weird.
So there's still kind of that a difference, let's just say.
Yeah, our son Christopher is very much in the unawake science space. If I can't see it, smell it, if I can't know it with my five senses, it doesn't exist, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he and his wife are new parents. They have a 5-month-old baby girl, Ella Joy, who is just amazing. And the thing is that she has this amazing connection with her dad. And I so want to tell him, hey, you too have a really strong soul connection. This goes way back lifetimes. She was just waiting to come into the world and join you. But, if I told him that, he'd look at me crosswise. So,
sure. But at the same point, that may very well be a part of what she's here to do, is to maybe help him with that connection, but also awakening.
Yep, that's a really good point. Yeah.
It'd be fun to know how things progress in that respect.
Yeah.
Hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But and I find that so fascinating. It kind of turns things on its head when you think that you've got, from your core family of 5, that 3 of you are like-minded in terms of the spiritual metaphysical piece, and the other 2 aren't. And how does that show up in family dynamics? Are the 2 that aren't open to that, or as open to that, open enough, or do they get angry, or is that where there's any tension? Or is it just what it is?
Pretty much just is what it is. Our daughter Krista is really on the edge. I mean, she's come to some Sabbats that I've hosted, Sabbat celebrations, and enjoyed them. Lauren has she had a tarot reading a couple of years ago that was so spot on, and she embraced it. So she's just she's really on the edge. And Lauren and I have talked about it, and Lauren's pretty confident that her sister is going to be opening up here and awakening pretty soon. And they're very close. Lauren and Krista are close, and I don't think Lauren's going to stand by and let her sister just kind of slide on by without giving her a few little gentle or not so gentle nudges.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I was thinking how that's really similar to change and how people change in general, is that they change in their own way in their own time. Yeah. Not everybody does it at the same time. And just like you had said, you were kind of the pioneer of this, of the shift in your family in general, and it just takes other people time. But thank you for sharing that. I find that really it's that ongoing question I have, because it's like, could they do a reality show on your family?
They could.
Living in the light, It'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be. That'd be interesting.
Well, so So your abridged version leaves us with another 40 minutes to talk. So I
Oh,
am wondering if there are areas that you've abridged that you would like to expand upon.
yeah, there's a couple of areas, three areas. Um, One is really early on when I was a young child. I was still living in Southern California and LA area. I was probably maybe 7, 8, 9 years old in that area. And I used to just know things,
Mm,
but not things like, oh, mommy's coming home with donuts from the grocery store. The big things, like I have this very clear memory of standing out on the sidewalk. And Southern California is pretty sunny, but this day there was a strong wind blowing, and there were these dark gray clouds just roiling across the sky rapidly. And the wind was blowing, and I'm standing there looking up at the sky, and I knew with every fiber of my being that the world was going to end. Now, yeah, I knew the world was going to end, and that was pretty scary for me because I was being raised Catholic, and the only thing I knew of the end of the world was what is in Revelations with the sun turning to blood and rivers of
yeah.
blood and what have you, and it's just frightening, the description. And so that was my only reference. But what I was really picking up on is that this 3D world that we live in
Mm,
was ending, absolutely, completely ending, and we were ascending into the 5D world, a whole new world. But I knew that. And another interesting little tidbit was a few years later. I think I was 12. It was during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
mm-hmm.
The entire world sat on the edge of its seat and held its collective breath, scared witless that a nuclear war was going to start. I mean, I remember being in school, and the teachers weren't teaching, the kids weren't studying, nobody was doing anything. We were literally sitting in our desks in shock, and people in fear, just quietly talking about this whole situation. And again, I knew with every fiber in my being that there was not going to be a nuclear war, not then, not now, not ever, that it was never going to happen. And once I knew that, whew, all that worry and everything just vanished. And people would talk about, nuclear disarmament and yada, yada, yada. And that was really big back then. And the peace movement was starting to really get going. And I'm like, don't worry, it's not going to happen. Yeah, we need to stop making those stupid weapons because we're not going to use them. It's a waste of money. But I just knew. So,
Wow.
yeah, all along there have been these instances, and yet I spent so much of my adult life just kind of ignoring it.
Yeah.
I I think because I was a little weirdo and so different that all I really wanted to do as an adult was fit in. And I thought the best way to fit in and be normal was to have that beautiful house in the suburbs with the 2.4 kids and the good jobs and all of that. And I achieved that. And then I found out that it was just an empty box. It was a nothing. It was not, it didn't make me happy, it didn't make me feel normal.
That's so, I, I really, really resonate with your story on many levels.
Yeah.
The whole thing about wanting to be normal, and I've been doing a lot of personal work around that because I'm realizing, kind of similar to what you had just talked about, how many aspects of my life were based on other people's
Yeah.
ideals of what we are supposed to want, what we're supposed to be happy with, and what it means to be normal.
Yeah.
And why would we even want to be normal? What is
Yeah.
there really a normal? You know,
Well,
everybody's different.
yeah.
There's a norm.
Yep. In the 3D world, in our culture, yeah, there is that normal. And I would say to anyone, especially younger people, don't be normal. If you feel like you're weird, you're different, you're out of sync with others, embrace it,
Yep.
look at it, examine it, feel into it, explore it, and you be you, and you do you, always, always.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's taken me, I'm 54, it's taken me this long to understand what that even means, being you,
Uh-huh.
because so I have like a history of being an empath without knowing it most of the time and giving myself away in favor of other people, and to the point of being the other, like being a chameleon in pretty much any area, because that was a kind of, I didn't have a really bad childhood like it sounds, but it was a survival tactic for me
Sure.
to, keep the peace, let's say.
Yeah.
And it also afforded me things as a result of fitting in and being normal. And the only way I knew how to do that was to be like other people.
Yeah.
And so people would say, just be yourself. And I'm like, I don't really get that. What does that even mean? Because I didn't know what that was. I didn't know who I was, because I was always giving myself away. Or really just, that's not even the right word for it. It's like ignoring and kind of pushing myself into some little dark corner in favor of allowing other people's personas and thoughts and emotions and habits become me.
Yeah.
And it's quite a journey to distance from that, and a pretty big shift in mindset and worldview. I mean, really, it's a change in worldview.
It's huge.
So I saw you raise your hand, so that's something that you can
Yeah, I can really
with.
relate to it. Just trying to fit in and doing what I thought I needed to do to fit in. Not anymore.
I'm curious about your profession and how you came about that, but also I don't know if your awakening occurred while you were still working in that profession. And I'd love to hear more about that if you're willing to share. And if you don't want
Sure.
to, that's totally fine too.
No, sure. So I was a software developer, and I am now retired for about 5 years. My passion is anthropology and archaeology, and art. And I started out in university studying art, dropped out, kicked around for a number of years. I had a little boy, and it was he and I working multiple jobs. And I wanted to go back to college. I knew I wanted to go back to college. I wanted to be able to get a good job and, achieve that middle class dream. And I had a boyfriend at the time who was a computer programmer. And he said, you're pretty smart. Why don't you take this test? Because this is a test that my company gives to all prospective programmers. So I took it and I passed the test, and that got me thinking, well, maybe I could study computer science. And this is in the 70s, the mid 70s.
Wow.
So I looked around and I moved back to Eugene, Oregon, enrolled at Lane Community College and started on their computer science program. That's where I met Mark. He had started out in electrical engineering and then discovered computers, and he loved it. And so we were in a number of classes together, and that's where we met, which is a whole other story in itself. But anyway, so I got
I'm perking up to that.
I got an associate's degree in computer science and got a job and yada, yada. Off and on. I took time off when our girls were little. But I had a blossoming career, earning good money and everything. And then by the time I hit my 50s, I was starting to burn out on it. And that's when I was really opening up, and I was going through all these phases and learning so much metaphysical things. And then, oh God, about 10 years ago or so, I just reached a point where I'm like, oh my God, I am working hard to make a rich man even richer. And I hate this. I want to do something. I want to help humanity. I want to do something that uplifts the world. And that was my goal. And yes, I was very much awake, and I had no compunction about bringing it into the office. As a matter of fact, my little cubicle had plants, it had crystals. I had a little sign that says, I'm a real witch with or without my coffee. And it kind of got around that people knew I was a witch, a practicing witch. And I hear little disparaging comments every once in a while, but it was also funny that people would come to me with, well, I moved into this new house and there's just something going on. Can you maybe help me? And so, yeah, I had that kind of dynamic going on. And I started manifesting my retirement probably 3 years prior to it. I mean, everything in every way, shape, or form, because I wanted out of there. And then I found a way that I could retire early, and I did. And it's been wonderful. People go, oh, are you tired of retirement? Hell no. I'm not tired of
No.
retirement. I love it. This is probably the best time of my whole life, hands
That's
down.
wonderful. So I'm curious about what did you do to manifest if you felt, if there were a number of different things that you worked on and.
Well, I was taking a number of courses from my friend who was a long-term practicing witch, and some of these were in manifesting, setting your intentions, doing affirmations, writing, and so on. And a man that I greatly respected, a phenomenal trance medium by the name of Arthur Pacheco, passed. And I knew Arthur. I was friends with him, had readings with him, and greatly admired him. He passed suddenly and kind of unexpectedly, and I started tuning into him and asking for his help. And he kind of guided me. Also, my guides helped me. They told me in December, you know what, buy a sewing machine. And it's just like, what? Buy a sewing machine? Yeah, we want you to start sewing again. Okay, so I bought a sewing machine, and they said, buy fabric. Start making things. And I said, I don't want to make clothes. I'm not going to sew clothes. No, make art. I had done this in my 30s. I had done fabric art, and I loved it when I was a stay-at-home mom. And so I started doing the fabric art again, and it was that creative, artistic expression and involvement that gave me the impetus to manifest my early retirement. So, yeah, I would recommend, if you're trying to anyone trying to manifest something, we all have creative modalities. Tap into your creative modality and use it to help co-create what you want.
I love that. I'm thinking about what that, when you were talking, what popped into my head is when I was a kid, I used to make greeting cards for people.
Yeah.
And I didn't just write cards, but I explored different things. And in the back, I'd always put like a little barcode. And I'd put the date that I made it as the numbers on top. And then I'd do a little head with like my head opening up saying from the mind of Megan, which is my email address. And actually, one of my email addresses, but it's like, I keep thinking about that. I keep thinking about Mind of Megan. I keep thinking about how I used to just make a lot of things, and now I really don't as much.
See?
And I almost get paralyzed in what is it I want to make? Because there's so many interests I have. Like I love clay. I love working with clay, but I haven't worked with clay since college. And I don't know. I'm more creative when it comes to helping my daughter come up with ideas and things that she can do without doing them myself. But it's great that you tapped into that.
Well, busy parents, when you're in the thick of it, it's hard to find time for your own creativity. But it's so uplifting and beneficial on so many levels, for your health, for your spiritual journey, whatever. It's creativity in all its many sources. Even if you're just like, my sister is a hairstylist, and she was a really good hairstylist, but she thought that she had no artistic ability. I said, yeah, you do. Your art, people's heads of hair is your art palette. It's your it's your canvas. You're creative. So there's all kinds of ways.
So like where where does creativity show up in life? Because I
Yeah.
kind of think it does show up most of the time, although not always. I mean, I'm speaking from my own perspective, and I'm fortunate enough to be self-employed, and I create things for my profession, and I do feel that there is an aspect of creativity. Well, I know there's an aspect of creativity in part because right now I'm like, man, all I'm doing is trying to build a business to the point where all I'm focusing on is the building, and I'm not actually doing the stuff that I really love to do, which includes that creative piece. So it's like when I'm starved of that creativity, I can really feel it. And yeah.
Why don't you try and change your perception just a skosh? Because what you're doing right here, this is creative. This is creative.
Well, and I think
this is very
I would
creative. You are doing something phenomenally creative.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love this. Is so mashup stuff is my favorite thing to do. I mean, I'm working on expanding it because I love it so much. And then I have the professional part of me, so I'm like running two things at once, which is a challenge. And I know that everybody says to direct it in one way, but the other part of me is actually also really creative, working to create happy, healthy, productive workplaces that thrive. That's my overarching goal. And I have all kinds of things I can do that with, but I don't have clients to do it with. So it's building the part, and that part is just excruciatingly dull for me.
Yeah.
I am not interested in list management and developing a list, and networking's okay, but I'm not getting to do that creative part on that side of me. And it's like, every time I sit down to try to do that work, just the building part, it's like, my husband who does marketing loves that part. And I'm like, yeah, you love that part. I did like it at one point, but now it's just, that's all I'm doing.
I wonder if that's a Lightworker thing, because I think a lot of us, people who, do readings and what have you to earn money are trying to build businesses, but managing the nuts and bolts of it and the business building aspect of it, it's just like, boring.
Well, and it is, and it's changed. I've been in business for 13 years, and back at the beginning, there was some online presence, but it isn't like there was no LinkedIn that I was aware of at the time, at least. There wasn't Facebook, all of these social media outlets. And then at some point, it's when I'm really spending time on LinkedIn. And the people in LinkedIn are fine, but they're not my people in the up high vibe way.
Yeah.
I mean, meeting them one-on-one, some of them are, actually really wonderful, enlightening people. And I mean, they are all just wanting to build their own businesses too, right?
Sure.
So it's not like there's anything wrong with them, but it takes more energy. And if I spend a day on LinkedIn, I have to do something pretty dramatic to counter that, how I feel at the end of the day, because it just sucks me dry. Sometimes it's like, man. Now, that being said, it's the only place to really go, aside from knocking on doors, which is not something I want to do at this point in time, because nobody's there and they want to make an appointment anyway. They want to connect with you in different ways socially. But in some ways, the Lightworker stuff you can do differently. And now I'm talking and I'm thinking, well, why am I not employing more of that in the other side of my business? And that's a really good question. I'm trying to in some respects, but not to the same level as I could, I think.
Yeah, maybe try it. Wouldn't hurt to try it and see if employing some of those methods isn't more fruitful and uplifting. At least won't leave you drained at the end of the day. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah. But you didn't think this would be one of the counseling sessions.
This just happens. I have friends and people that I chat with, and stuff comes to me. It just does, and I share it, and it's just who I am. Let my freak flag fly.
Definitely. Well, so what are some things that you've talked about things, the eclecticism
Uh-huh.
of your nature, and I really identify with that too. And it sounds like you've gotten into a lot of things and that you kind of integrate it and then move on. What are some of the things that really stand out to you, or what are some of the things that you're into now, or both, if we have time for both?
Some of the things that stand out. I would have to say, and this isn't one of the spiritual modalities that I encountered, but in my mid 40s, I went through a really tough life lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at the same time that I had finally given up on Christianity because nothing about Christianity fit or worked for me. And I just threw my hands up and I'm like, okay. And I was in such a place of pain and fear and, yeah, just a lot of pain, fear, anger, and trauma that I threw my hands up and I was like, I don't even know if there's a God. I don't know. I don't know. It was like when it came to spirituality, I didn't know which way to turn. And I didn't really care. I was kind of pissed. And I started going through some therapy. And one of the things that we did was in this therapy, I don't know how it came about, but I started remembering childhood memories that were very traumatic and bad. And they were related to my relationship with my dad. And it was at that point that I was in my bedroom in my beautiful middle-class home in the suburbs in the middle of this personal shit show. And my dad just said as clear as a bell, he said something to the effect, I don't remember the exact words, I'm so sorry, I really didn't know what I was doing. Mm. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt it was my dad coming through clear. Wow. And from that point on, he was kind of there helping me, guiding me. And another thing that happened simultaneously during that time was God told me, I don't care what you call me, just call me. Because I was going through this thing, I don't like God because God is male, God is patriarchal. I have a lot of problems with fathers, I'm not interested in a father God, what? And so I started calling Source, Spirit, Creator. Mm-hmm. And that worked for me. But God said, I don't care what you call me, just call. So I did. And that really turned things around. And then the place I was working at, I was a programmer working, and the place I was working at, the business just changed hands, got bought out, became awful, didn't want to work there, and it forced me into getting a new job. And at that new job, I met this wonderful woman with whom I'm still friends, and she turned me on to her kind of teacher, her guru, who taught a psychic development course. And I took that psychic development course, and that just blew things wide open. Yeah. So that was a very profound. It wasn't really discovering a modality. It was just really igniting my my spiritual journey. And I'd have to say that in looking back on the really tough times, the life lessons that I went through in my life, I could see very clearly how it was always the same theme. It was always the same lesson. And when they say, if you don't learn it, life will bring it back around. That's very true. And every time it comes back around, it can be a little more forceful.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and the whole point of the lesson was, quit trying to figure every damned thing out on your fucking own.
Yep.
You're a partner in spirit. Whatever you're in, whatever you're going through, there's a whole host of beings, of ascended masters, angels, your guides, your higher self, and humans too, who help you. Don't close yourself off. Don't think you have to figure it out. Don't left brain it. Open up. Let spirit help. Be a partner with spirit in whatever you're going through. And that to me, that is the biggest life lesson for me, and what I'm still learning.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, and it's just I'm kind of laughing here, not at all at your story,
Yeah.
but the serendipitous aspects of it.
Well, it probably rings
like,
true for a lot of people.
oh my gosh. Well, I'm in that mode where definitely a repeating pattern in my life. Definitely a lot harder than in many ways than the earlier ones were, and the earlier ones weren't all that happy
No,
either.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, what am I missing? You know, so that's one of the things that's really getting on me, is like, I feel like it's so, well, I think actually Mark had said at some point, you know, it has to do with money, you know, well, hello, because it does.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's just money. I think it actually is how I consider money and how I consider value and worth, and probably self-value and worth, and how I'm showing up as a result to those things. But the part of partner in spirit, and you don't have to figure it all out yourself, and
Right.
left braining it are so my go-to things. My last mashup with Nicole Powers was all about surrender. And I had mentioned a book that I'll mention again because it was a pretty profound one for me, by Michael A. Singer, called The Surrender Experiment. And he's basically, instead of trying to control every aspect of his life, he is noticing things that are opportunities that come his way. And if he noticed resistance to it, then that was a sign for him to lean in and pursue it, because it was him trying to take control. I mean, that resistance is like, no, I'm not going to do that. And instead, leaning in led to him. It's so many fabulous, and I mean, not all positive, but
Yeah.
I mean, but life lesson things that were things he was intended to learn, and he realized that. But it was it was a really interesting story.
Yeah.
What I didn't get in that, he tried to explain how to surrender. But you know, for me, I almost need like a step-by-step thing, and then a chip in my brain to remind me every time I forget.
Same here.
Because
Same here. Yep. I need a reminder.
Yeah, because it's easy, and it's so easy to isolate from other people and from source and spirit energy during those times when there are problems and choices.
Yes.
And not knowing what the right one is. So I've been doing this. You know, I've had some interesting conversations with, you know, I meditate and I have conversations with Source and my spirit guides regularly, but there are some times when the only visual I have is Caddyshack, where the guy is golfing on the hill and there's a thunderstorm and he's like, yeah, you're not going to get me. You know, he's raising his golf clubs and then gets struck by lightning.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of asking for that in a way, because I'm like, you know, you've got to, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. You know, you've got to show me the right path, because I have like 10 and I don't know which one is the right one. And so instead I'm just sitting here, you know, and I do get answers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes
Exactly.
very funny ways.
Yeah.
One of the things I wrote down, you'd mentioned it now a couple of times, and I'm just going to bring up serendipity again because I love that word and I love the meaning behind it. But you, what was it? A friend said, or I don't know if it was a boyfriend or a friend who said, hey, take this test. I think you said boyfriend, guy you were dating.
Yeah, yeah.
Take this test to see if, you know, computers are something you would be good at. And you took it and you passed, and then you moved to Eugene, and then you went to school, and that's where you met Mark.
Yeah.
And I just think, okay, so had that guy not ever given you the test, how different might your life be?
Yeah.
And the same thing with the psychic development course that you took, because you changed jobs, you worked with a friend who introduced you to her, you know, your guru, and that's where you found the psychic development piece. And I don't know, I just want to point that out because it's so fabulous.
Yeah, it is. And it's just all the universe, you know, helping us every step along the way. Kind of, we think we're in control, but when you look at it, not so much.
Yeah.
You know, and things just kind of happened serendipitously, and brought me right along to where I'm at. And I love where I'm at. I love life.
Well, and it shows. You
Thank
seem
you.
happy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that in those times when well, like I just described, where it's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I know these are little pockets of time. I think that's what I was going to say about the book and what was missing, because he told all the stories of the events that changed his life. And then there's all of this time, most likely in between, where that wasn't happening. I mean, you know, where it's like, you're just there doing whatever. That's being in uncertainty, and uncertainty can be maddening at times when you want something to happen, and it's where control and need for control shows up a lot.
Oh, see, and you're just talking right to me in the place where I'm at right now. It's like, you know, there are things that I want to have happen. You know, we're always manifesting, and there are things I am manifesting, and I want them to manifest now. And
relate.
And sometimes I'm like, okay. So, and sometimes I think, well, everything, as Abraham Hicks says, you know, everything's in the vortex. Everything you want to manifest, it's in the vortex. It's in your escrow. You know, just trust the timing, trust the process. And then there's other times where I'm going, okay, I'm actively manifesting something. Am I not doing it right because it's not here yet? Yada, yada, yada. And then I will get frustrated and throw my hands up and like, I don't know. Give me a sign. Show me. I need some help here. That's what my go-to is now. Whenever I find myself really frustrated, I just like tell my team, hey, you know what? I need some help. Give me some reassurance, something. And without fail, they give me reassurance. Saw a beautiful black crow feather stuck smack upright in the ground when I was on a walk the other day. Smack upright. Yeah, not lying there, just in the middle of a lawn.
Like, here you go.
Yeah, exactly. Angel numbers up the wazoo. Yesterday I saw 111 and 555 repeatedly. So, and then of course I'm scrolling through Facebook, and people are posting things, little memes and sayings and so on, and it's word for word. It's my guides, and they're just, so it's there. And when we need that reassurance, we need that help, just reach out and they provide it.
They do.
They do.
I love that, because that it takes me to the word trust. And
yes,
another thing we talked about in the last mashup as well with Nicole, because to me, surrender and trust, there's a lot of connections between that and belief, and that they're all different, but they together are a great thing.
Absolutely.
And I always have, when I allow myself to release and trust, things always turn out. And I know I don't know how things are going to turn out, and I realize that timing is everything, and I am not the person in charge of that timing.
Yeah.
And so just the other day, it's like, so the strangest thing, we were looking at maybe refinancing or finding a different kind of car with lower car payments and stuff like that. And we've been just kind of walking, or not walking, but driving around figuring out, what do we want to do and stuff. And I kind of at first had a lack mentality about it. It's like, I have to give up my awesome car and I love this car. Well, I opened up to the whole thing, and it turns out that we went to a place, got a vehicle that was at least comparable, if not more equipped than what I have now, with almost $200 reduced payments. And on the way to get that car, I was kind of feeling sad, because I named the car that we traded in is called Claire, and she named herself, and I'm like, I love Claire, and I want to say goodbye. But at the same point, it was time, I guess. But I'm just like kind of grumpy, and I'm driving for the last time this car, and I look and I see this car, and it has a little rainbow on it, and then it says rainbow. So it was just so defined. So I just blurted it out. I'm like, rainbow. And my husband said, oh yeah, huh? And I'm like, what do you mean? Because he wasn't looking in that direction. He said, no, there's a rainbow.
Oh my God.
And I wouldn't have seen the rainbow had I not said it, and had my husband not pointed it out. And so I'm looking, I'm like, oh my God, and I laughed, because I'm like, thank you for the message. I get it. Had my daughter take a picture of it and everything, but I just thought it was hilarious. He didn't find the humor, but I just thought it was really funny.
That is amazing.
They really had to spell it out for me. Rainbow.
And they do. Sometimes they have to really spell it out for us, but
I kind of think I have to ask for that more. Like, can you spell it out like that rainbow thing? That really helped.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought it was really fun, and it helped so much shifting the way I was feeling about
Mm-hmm.
the situation. And I was like, but this is actually a good thing. Why do I feel bad about it? And I think the reason I felt bad about it was not it had nothing to do with my spiritual connection, which is what I was thinking. Is this a bad thing? Am I
Mm-hmm.
intuiting something? No, it was my mindset and my worldview about what it means to economize, maybe. I mean, I wasn't using that word at the time, but it was like, so because I'm trading this car in for lower payments, and, then I felt bad about it. Like, this is a bad thing, but it really wasn't. It turned out really well.
Really well. Cool.
It's like it guided me in many different, in fact, even an intuitive aspect was to, we were going to go and purchase this car sooner. And I just had a really strong feeling that we had to go to this competitive dealer that we didn't like. We didn't have good service at that place earlier in the year when we were just messing around, for like wanted to drive a Jeep, and it's like, what are those like? We just did not have a good customer experience. So we were never going to go back to that place. But I'm like, I think we need to go there. And my husband had reached the same conclusion. So he's like, yeah, we need to go there. So we went there. And they gave us a much lower rate and much more money for my car as a trade-in. And when we called the place we wanted to purchase from, we told them these things, and they beat the price.
Wow. So you got a better price at a much nicer place.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yeah. And all of that at the time, I didn't recognize as the spiritual guidance that it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I trusted the intuition part. I knew that was there. But after the fact, I'm like, okay, so you're basically saying this all had to take place the way that it did, with the people that it did, and the timing that it did. And I really, stopped trying to control that stuff. It would have turned out, much differently had I.
It's amazing. Co-partnering with spirit and to co-create, your very best life. It's amazing. Yeah.
Co-partnering to co-create. I'm writing that down. I love that. Well, we have another 15 minutes left.
Yay!
What do you want to talk about? No pressure.
I don't want to just be blabbing about myself and
please. I feel like that's what I've been doing. So please.
Let me think of any. Oh, well, here's another example, and hopefully it isn't too much personal information family-wise, but this is another example of that surrendering, trusting, not left-braining it. Our daughter, Lauren Olivia, who is amazing, has always been a very special person. I mean, from before she was born. I used to have dreams. I knew she was a girl, and this was back before they could tell you the gender. I knew I was having a baby girl. I knew she was special. I had dreams, or she'd come to me. I ate a lot of strawberries and cantaloupe when I was pregnant with her. And from the moment she was born, she was a very strong, dynamic individual. Very smart, very strong-willed. She knew what she wanted to do, and she knew how she was going to do it. And the rest of the world just really needed to get out of the way. And she's an indigo. And this was before they wrote that wonderful book about indigo children, which is another funny story. And I had no idea. So I was pretty clueless as to how to parent this really amazing, dynamic child. And there were times when she was young where I would I literally didn't know what to do. And I'd go, you know what, God, you created this child with me, help me out. I need some inspiration. I don't know how to handle this situation. And God would always come through with the right thing to do. Like if she would get so frustrated and she would start crying, and she'd be red in the face and sweaty from crying and unable to calm herself and her emotions. And they told me, take a hairbrush, sit her on your lap and start brushing her hair. So I did that. boom, she calmed down. And that was my go-to to calm her. And then I wash her face with cold water and soothe her. And then the moment had passed. But when she became a teenager and she was going through situations, I completely lost sight of that. So instead of going to Spirit, trusting Spirit, asking Spirit for help, I was trying to figure out in left brain, what she was going through as a teenager and what I needed to do to parent her as a parent. I'm getting a little emotional here. Sorry.
So am I.
Trying to figure it out on my own, and I couldn't. And this is when I got steeped in so much fear and pain. And anyways, and depression, because I felt like I'd utterly failed her. And that's what brought me completely to my knees and to actually opening up and realizing after the fact that, you need Spirit in your life. You need God in your life, however you want to call God, whatever you want to call it. You need it in your life. And so that was a really fundamental changing moment for me. Yeah. So, and for me, it's just a very strong principle. If you're in the middle of a shit show, don't manage it on your own. Go to whatever you call it, source, creator, Spirit, the flying spaghetti monster, doesn't matter. And just get the help you need and the inspiration.
I'm so thankful that you shared that story. Personally, I relate to it on a couple of levels. One is our daughter's 12, going on 13 in March, and changing schools. She's managed it really well. But there have been times where I have been left braining it, trying to figure out how to respond, and those never work. But actually, I have a better mirror in my husband, who's very much doing that. And I'm like, how about if we try a different approach? That when I've allowed things to happen naturally, the thing that has worked for me with my daughter is humor. And it's her own brand of humor. And I don't try to make her laugh. I just do. I say something that she just thinks is super goofy, and she'll start from crying to laughing in like just a matter of seconds. And I always count those as a win, and I'm thankful that whatever came into my, because it's not like I'm strategizing. What can I say to make her laugh?
You're just opening up and trusting.
And I have some fears around the teenage years, just basically not anything to do with, well, in a part having to do with her, but also just because of my own experiences with being a teenager and having family members who were teenagers when I was older than, by a decade. So it's like I have this idea of what a teenager is that I think is now being reshaped, which is good because I'm allowing that. So that I don't impose those fears and beliefs on her. That's good. And that takes a significant amount of trust, especially as she enters an environment. It's a Catholic school. We're not Catholic. They're receptive to people who aren't of the same religion. I am thinking personally that will be tested for me, not so much for my daughter, but because I've practiced in many different spiritual areas as well. And I don't know how receptive they're going to be. I've had dreams about my own fears around that too, which is really interesting to me. And I want her to be kind of a clean slate going in there and seeing how it resonates with her without trying to impose that stuff. It's anyway, so I
think you're on the right track there. I think you're totally on the right track. I feel that.
Well, thank you. But I think that piece about trusting is so important.
You cannot left brain teenagers. Can't.
No, they totally know when you're doing it.
You need to, that's really when we need to partner with Spirit. Very much so. But funny little story, side note. Lauren was grown. She's in her early 20s, off on her own, and I was in a wonderful metaphysical bookstore here in Portland, just browsing around, and I happened to see a book called Indigo Children in the children's section, and it just leaped out at me. The title did. And so I took it down and I was perusing it. And they had this is in the early 2000s, and they had this handy dandy checklist of your child may be an indigo if. And I read all those 20 some points, and she was every one of them. And I'm like, I literally said it out loud in the bookstore. I said, where the hell was this book when I needed it?
You could have written the book.
Well, I needed to read that book. I needed to understand. I mean, it was so many light bulbs going off. This is who my daughter is. This amazing, cutting edge, person coming into the world now as an indigo and shaking things up and literally creating a new paradigm and helping all of us, move out of that 3D into that 5D world.
Yes. Do you remember the name of the name of the book is Indigo Children, but do you by chance remember which, because there's several now. I've come across some as well, and those always resonate with me.
Golly, I'm sorry. I don't remember the name of the author.
That's okay. You don't have to.
Yeah.
But if you did, I'll still add something to the show notes about it for those of you who aren't familiar with that term. And what's the name of the metaphysical bookstore? Because I think I've seen pictures of this awesome bookstore that I want to go to.
It's called New Renaissance Bookstore. But it's more than books. They've got tons of crystals. They've got CDs, prayer flags. They have a lot of things for all different modalities. Everything from witchcraft up to Hinduism and Buddhism and everything in between.
And this is in Portland?
Yeah.
Awesome.
On Northwest 23rd Avenue.
I'm going to go there when I come to Portland, which I have no plans at the moment. But when I go, I'm going to that store. Of course, I want to visit with you guys too.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll just start making plans to go to Portland, and then eventually it'll happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a guest room.
Awesome.
Just saying.
Okay, well, there you go. I'm going to start. I am declaring I am going to Portland.
Yay.
Then I just have to decide when. Well, I am just thrilled by this conversation, Mary Ann. I definitely want to have you on again. It's like kind of want to do an all in the family thing, but at the same time,
that would be awesome.
Not like the show, but with the three of you, that would be super neat. I'm not exactly sure how to do that yet, so we'll have to mull that over. But I really appreciate all of the insights you shared, your stories, and really just getting to know you better and having these conversations is just really enjoyable to me, hopefully for other people as well and for you.
Yeah, it was.
Good. Good. Any finishing thoughts, Mary Ann, before we say goodbye?
No, just want to give a shout out to all light workers here in the lab watching this. I love you all. And I think I don't say that lightly. I do. Many of you I know, many I don't. But I love you all. And I look forward to seeing your posts and sharing mine and our connection.
Wonderful. What a nice way to conclude. So I'll just say thank you again.
Sure.
Love to all of you. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
For those of you going to the Bliss Retreat, have an awesome time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.